morning. Tessa here with Conway Public Library in front of this boring beige wall behind me to go along with the theme of a book I'd like to read to you. Meet the Dullards, Extra Boring Edition. It even has a review by a reader, and it says, "I yawned the whole way through." This book is by Sarah Pennypacker and illustrated by Daniel Salmieri. Now, the reason I chose to read this book today is because I figured it needed some respect. You see, I found it on display, which is great, but on the inside of the book, where you can see I've had to cut the front matter, was a wad of gum that someone had freshly stuck there. Maybe they thought it was funny. Maybe they thought it was acceptable. Neither of which is true. Well, I'm pretty insulted by that. So let's just celebrate this book instead. Shall we? Here we go. Meet the Dullards. One day, Mr. and Mrs. Dullard received quite a nasty surprise. It appears as though the children are reading books. The Dullards collected the books and handed their children some nice blank paper to read instead. Then they left the room to discuss the problem in private. This was not the first time that their children had given them a shock. Last week, they had asked to go to school, and just the day before, Mr. Dullard had caught them trying to play outside. Mr. Dullard shook her head sadly. Mrs. Dullard. "Where did we go wrong?" Now, Mr. Dullard comforted his wife. "It can't be our fault. We're perfectly dull." And then we have here a snail crossing the road. "Perhaps it's this place," he said. "Last fall, remember, some leaves turned color, and now this." He pointed to an upsetting commotion in the driveway. "There's never a dull moment." "You may be right. It's like a circus around here," Mrs. Dullard agreed. "This is no place to raise Blanda, Borley, and little Dud." So the Dullards packed up their 3 dull children and all their dull things and moved. Just as they brought the last box into their new home, a lady came to the door. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said. "I baked you an applesauce cake." "Please don't use exclamation marks in front of our children," said Mrs. Dullard. "Smooth or chunky applesauce?" asked Mr. Dullard. "Chunks are so unpredictable, so nerve-wracking." "I'm sorry," said the neighbor lady. "It was chunky." "Goodbye," said the Dullards, shutting the door. "Well, I never," they heard the neighbor lady muttering as she carried her cake away. "Well, we never either," said Mr. Dullard. "That's how we keep our family so dull." "You children need to calm down after all that excitement," said Mrs. Dullard. "Go watch the television." Mr. and Mrs. Dullard finished unpacking all their dull things. This place feels more boring already," said Mr. Dullard. But then, what's going to happen? Horrors! The next room had flowery, colorful wallpaper. On the way to the paint store, the Dullards spotted an ice cream stand. Mr. Dullard ordered their usual 5 vanilla cones, please. Hold the cones and extract the vanilla. But all that would be left is plain ice cream, the clerk said. Yes, that's correct, said Mr. Dullard. Here they are at the paint store. At the paint store, Mr. Dullard suggested a medium gray. Too risky, Mrs. Dullard decided. Gray is the color of highways, and highways could make the children think about going somewhere. How about beige? Out of the question, said her husband. Beige reminds me of clay. The children might think of that and, he put his hand to his heart, want to make something. In the end, they told the clerk to mix the gray paint and the beige paint together, and the new color was indeed perfectly dull, like oatmeal left in the pot. After they finished painting the room, Mr. and Mrs. Dullard tried not to look at the walls, but it was no use. They were completely mesmerized. All day long, the Dullards watched the paint dry. What's happening? Looks like they're making a great escape. Finally, Mr. Dullard tore his gaze away. I think, he began. Mrs. Dullard shook her head. No thinking, she reminded her husband. It sets a bad example for the children. And speaking of the children, where are they? Out the window. What are they doing? They're outside, having fun, even with the cat and the dog. I can't imagine what came over them, Mr. Dullard said as he herded the children safely back inside. Perhaps this new home. It's terribly exciting. You may be right. It's like a circus around here, Mrs. Dullard agreed. This is no place to raise Bland-Up Borley and Little Dud. So the Dullards packed up their 3 dull children and all their dull things. And see, they're using a pragmatic moving container for all their stuff. And they're stealing away in the night. And then they see a billboard. Coming to town tonight. A circus. Ooh, that's far from dull. That night, Mr. and Mrs. Dullard fell asleep right away, secure in the knowledge that their children were perfect bores. But look. Where are the children going? They went to the circus! There is hope for those Dullard children after all. Yay! The end. And you can be assured that I have removed all of the chewed up gum cooties from this book, and it is still available for checkout. Please take care of your library books. Thank you.